if you look around you, to all the entrepreneurs that you look up to, the people that inspires you the most, you can probably think of someone right now. Matter of fact, pause the video, think about someone and comment it. And I'm going to do the same. Matter of fact, I already have someone in my head right now. And just notice how we look up to that person because we know them. Like we met that person somewhere, whether it's through social media or on any platform that we learn about them. We look up to them because we know who they are. We know they exist. And I mean, it's common sense, but that's not my point, because the person I have in mind right now, when I think about it, he or she is not the best in his or her industry. And I'm going to go as far as saying that that person is not the smartest person that I know, not the most talented person that I know of, but yet that individual still has the best result in the industry. He or she is the most successful in his or her industry. And it's probably the case with the person that you have in mind. And I say this because I genuinely think that the game is not really about who's the best. It's really about who's the most known, who has the most attention. And especially in business, when nobody knows you and you're no different than your competition, you're easily replaceable, you're just like everybody else, you're just a commodity. And a commodity could be anything really, like a utility, right? Utilities are commodities. Utilities are this thing that we have around our house that we use on a daily basis, like toilet paper or soap, right? Those are utilities. Now the thing is, utilities have a limited perceived value. So there's just so much that you can charge. There's just so much that you can charge for toilet paper. There's just so much that you can charge for this pen. Like if I want to go get a coffee and they charge me $5,000, I'm going to be like, no thanks. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. If not, it's probably illegal. And really at this point, you're just competing on price. I mean, there's a lot of people that makes a lot of money from selling utilities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at this point, you're really just competing on price. If I want to go get toilet paper, I'm not really going to look at the brand. I mean, I'll probably look at the quality, but really, who cares? I'll probably just take the one that has a discount or the cheapest one. And so my point is, a commodity has a limited perceived value. And one thing I can guarantee you is that the people that we have in mind right now are anything but a commodity. Now, for me, the person I had in mind the whole time was Alex Hormozi. I don't know who it was for you, but comment it and I'll check it. And you probably know him, maybe you don't. But the reason why he was so successful is not really because he's the best. It's because he mastered one thing, which is brand awareness. And the best example I could give you to illustrate that would be McDonald's. If we look at McDonald's, they don't have the best burgers, they don't have the best fries, they don't even have the best customer service, but they're still the best. They dominate the market. They're the most successful. And when I want to go eat something and I don't know what to take, I always end up taking McDonald's. Not because it's the best, but it's because that's all I know. And that's the power of brand awareness. And that is one of the things that Alex Hormozi mastered, and it's actually the main reason of his success. But funny enough, he didn't always believe in brand awareness. And what I mean by that is that in the beginning of his career, Alex is someone who's extremely good at sales, marketing, and business in general. He's extremely good at this. But back then, he was just doing business like everybody else. At that time, business was all about sales, marketing, closing people, right? Cold outreach, client acquisition, right? How many clients can you get? How many sales can you get? How much do you spend on ads, right? The best example would be like in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, right? People dial in, always on the phone, closing people back to back, selling dreams, right? That was the old way of doing business, and that's what Alex Hormozi strongly believed in.
Kevin, you give me one shot here on a blue chip stock like Kodak, and believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more. Sound fair enough?
Shit, my wife might divorce me, but yeah, let's do it. Oh, yeah.
Excellent choice, Kevin. How much you want to go for this time?
Matter of fact, he admitted that he didn't want to be known. He just wanted to build companies, be successful, make money, and not being known. He didn't want to make content. He didn't want to be known at all. He didn't want that life until he saw Kylie Jenner, who became a billionaire at 21. Now, that alone was impressive enough to caught his attention, but what pissed him off about this was the fact that she doesn't have any talent in particular besides being pretty. So he saw that coming and he was like, what are her skills? What does she has that I don't? Or what does she understands that I don't? The one thing that made her so successful is because she understood the power of brand awareness. She had an audience, she had attention, and that's why she was able to monetize so big. And ever since then, Alex never looked back at it, and he started making content, making videos, and he was spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on brand awareness. Same thing for Andrew Tate. The guy came out of nowhere and he became the most Googled person in the world. That's because he knew how to spread his message. He would distribute his content through Hustle University by using teenagers and emphasize them with affiliate commissions. And he did that because he understood the power of brand awareness. Iman Ghazi, the entrepreneur that Gen Z look up to the most, he started his YouTube channel at 14 years old. Broke kid from London, living with a single mother, trying to start his online agency, and he documented the whole thing. Now he's teaching people how to start their own online marketing agency. And I remember before I bought his course, I've been watching his content for a year. And when I bought it, my mom was like, "Is that a scam? Like, do you know the guy?" I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "You know him?" I was like, "No, but yeah." Because there was just something with his content, right? I saw him go from broke to successful, and he documented everything. He was giving value, and he was teaching how that was a way for him to build a relationship with his audience. That's how trust was built, and that's how people do business nowadays. That's how people educate their audience. That's how people build trust with their audience, with their customers, with their clients. And so I bought his course, and I didn't think twice. I feel like I knew the guy. And although brand awareness is very powerful and very obvious, yet nobody really does it. Funny enough, the only way to get ahead of the 99% is by doing what the 99% don't. And Alex said this one day in this podcast with Chris Williamson. He was saying, if you want to know what are the chances of you achieving the goals that you set yourself, simply make a list of all the things that you aren't willing to do or aren't willing to sacrifice to achieve that goal. And once you've done that list, look at it and just keep in mind that the people who will beat you are the one who are willing to pay the price that you aren't willing to pay. The people who will beat you are the one who will do everything you put on that list. That's what he meant by that. But these people are the 99%. All you really have to do is the work that they are avoiding. Beat them by doing everything they wrote on that list. And chances are making content was probably on that list. In fact, I'm going to show you how they did it step by step. And I'm talking about Iman Ghazi, Alex Ramosi, Patrick Bet-David, Gary Vee, and many others. Now the first step, or the first principle, was that they figured out who they served. They knew who they were serving. They knew their audience. And you can ask yourself, who do you serve? And you really want to be clear about that. You really want to be clear on that. And the best way to do this would really be to just imagine you're serving yourself, right? One thing I noticed after studying people like Iman, Alex, and many others is that their audience is basically people that were in their shoes. They're basically making content to the old version of themselves. When you think about Iman and his course, right, he's targeting young teenagers that have been through the same struggle that he's been through, trying to start their online business, and his course is here to solve that. All the businesses that they built and the problem that they are solving is targeting their old self, or at least people who've been in their shoes. And they do that because it's easier to serve someone who's been through the same experience than you. And since you're unique and you know yourself better than anybody else, nobody can compete with you, right? You cannot be a commodity at this point. Now, step 2 is that they knew what problem these people had and they knew how to solve it. So by you being the niche, you being the brand, and making content to people who've been through your shoes, knowing your audience as much as you know yourself, your message will by default target the right people, especially if you're being yourself, which is very important too. Now, the third step, or the third principle, is that they were consistent and authentic. And one thing I've noticed after stalking Mr. Beast, Iman, or Patrick Bet-David, after stalking their YouTube channel, well, basically I come down to this principle, which basically means that if you were to be consistent for a year of making content, once your first video goes viral, you now have all of these content that are here to solidify who you are, what you say, and what you claim to be. And by the time you go viral, you would have developed the skills and the muscles to keep the momentum. The last thing you want to happen is to lose the momentum. And there's so many people nowadays that just come and goes. They blow up and then you never heard of them. And it's simply because they don't have the skills and the muscle to keep the momentum. And that's one thing they all have in common. When you look at Mr. Beast, from when he first started, when you look at Iman, then the guy was 14 and he was putting out content ever since until the first video went viral. And now he had all of these content, these stories of him starting his first businesses, of him even failing, right? Him being broke, living in London. I remember like in one of his videos, like in his bathroom, nothing would work. Basically, like the water was cut off, electricity would be gone sometimes. Like that's the story behind the man. That's the story behind Iman. And that's the part of his brand until the day he buy his mom a new house and all of that, right? And that's for consistency. And as for being authentic, which is also very important, one thing I would have to say is do not change. Like, stay true to yourself because you are the brand. And I generally feel that people that are trying to be someone that they're not, especially online, it's just very stupid. I will explain myself and say why later, but just when you think about it, the biggest word in business is competition. But really, if you are the niche, if you are the brand, your content reflects your personality. You are you. Who are you really competing against? Nobody else knows you better than you do, and nobody is better at being yourself than you. So just focusing on doing what only you can do the best, which is being you, is very important. And when I say this, the first person I think of is Gary Vee. I mean, the guy, he can't change anything about his business or his brand, but one thing that will never change is Gary Vee. Like, when you think about just the way he talks and curses sometimes, and his style, the way he always has hats, or just the way he always shows up with a t-shirt and jeans at like business meetings, the way he always put up number 4 or 5, like when he talks like that, it's just, that's just him. I remember I was listening to his podcast while I was doing the dishes. By the time I would come back here and record, I would find myself just talking like him a little bit, or just like making this with my hands sometimes, just because I resonate so much with his content that without knowing it, it kind of influenced me, right? And that's the power of brand awareness again. All of the things I just list out about Gary Vee, his style, the way he talks and everything, that's him. That's his brand. That's Gary Vee, literally, right? But that's him. And now the reason why I genuinely think it's stupid to try to be someone that you're not, especially online. First off, me first, I mean, when you're starting out, you really feel like you're nobody. So trying to copy someone who's better than you, it seems like the right thing to do. But when you look at the long term, or when you just look at the bigger scale, it just doesn't make sense. The best example I could give is, imagine if Coca-Cola changed their colors to blue. They would go bankrupt. Why would they do that? They always been red. Like why would they do that? They're trying to be like Pepsi? Yeah, right. And that's how I see it, really. So on the long term, it would never work, really. And all of these people, Iman, Alex, Pat, they all have their own stories, and that's what makes them who they are. That's the brand. People buy into the story. People buy into the brand. When you look at big brands like Ferrari, Louis Vuitton, Rolls Royce, they all have a story behind. They all have a story. They've been there for decades. They've built a legacy. They've built a name. When you look even at the example I gave about McDonald's, it's the story that sells. And someone else, again, that is really true to himself is Alex Hormozi. Just the way he's so laid down and transparent. The guy always shows up with like a white beater, flannel short, jean shorts with Uggs, and like he always has a hat, you know, like now he has the hat of school, which is the most recent partnership he made with his portfolio company, right? The biggest investment he made. Back then he had the hat of client acquisition. And just like the way he changes bears sometimes, the guy is just being him. Money never changed him. He has all the money in the world, but he always stayed the same. He's just being true to himself. And one thing I would add on top of that is that the guy doesn't just talk about business, and that's very important. Beside your story, don't just talk about the same thing. Talk about you. Sometimes Alex talk about his gym workout, his diet. He make cooking videos sometimes. Like, what does cooking has to do with business, right? Ask him. He talks about his dad, his background, when he was in college, talks about his wife a lot. And recently he published a video on Valentine's Day where he was just giving relationship advice. He would talk about his wife, and he would just give relationship advice to young entrepreneurs and ambitious men, right? And that's why I like his content so much. I don't just watch him for business, although he's extremely good in business. The guy has a story. I know that when I listen to Alex, I don't just like him because of business. I like Alex, who he is, the person and the story behind the person, right? By being you by default are backing up every claim that you make, because you're not trying to be someone that you're not.